Welcome to Lost Creek Cabin 2021. We've just turned off the, well, I'll call it a main road, into basically my driveway. Technically it's not actually my driveway because I don't own the land all the way out to this point, but it's a dead-end road. It dead ends at the gate to my cabin, and there's absolutely nobody else in here. I'm the only building, the only person in this approximately 3/4 of a mile, a little more than a kilometer on this section here. I've sped it up just a little bit because it just didn't want to take 5 minutes to let you see the ride in. But I missed the leaves, you know. It's too bad because the color was really pretty 3 or 4 days ago, and as you can see, the trees are a little bit bare, so I just missed it a bit. But it's still a pretty ride, and it ends up near the end of it we're going up along the side of the lake and right up in the driveway. So stay tuned here. We won't be too long doing this. I think this is actually the first time that I've done the speed up on one of these videos, and I hadn't really considered that the dogs are going to be doing double speed as they trot up the road here. They look like they're really motoring, but don't worry, they're not. They're taking their time and they're just trotting along at an easy pace, but it certainly looks like they're really going. So I don't know if I like that or not, but it's kind of funny anyway. For some reason, right about this point, I lost the film. I don't know why, because it wasn't spliced or anything. The camera should have continued playing, but it just stopped. And I didn't realize it, of course, until I started to edit this, and that portion of the film was missing. So I've had to go back and redo this from the same point where it ran out. And I'm using the four-wheeler this time, so it looks a little bit different. It's kind of clearer. It's nice not to have to look through the dust on the windshield. But that's the reason for the sudden change in this. Doesn't really make any difference to the picture because I tried to stop and start at exactly the same point, and it's very, very close. So here we're coming in. We're right at the bottom of the lake. So that would be the west end of the lake, and the road goes. It was just a clearing there. I don't really know why it's been there forever that I know of. The road goes up the north side of the lake. My cabin is actually on the south side, so we go right up the side of the lake, and then it hooks to the right, and then it circles right around the end of the lake and right up my driveway. And I know this isn't exactly making charcoal so far, but I thought perhaps somebody might be interested in just seeing the ride in and a little bit more about, you know, what I'm like and where I live. And one of the things one of the reasons I make charcoal and a lot of the other things that I do is that I'm so far away from anywhere. It's 26, 27 miles or 41 or 2 kilometers to the nearest little town where I can get any supplies at all, groceries or so on. It is a very small town, so you know what's available there is very limited. So then I have to go to a bigger town. It's a small city, but that's 200 and something kilometers away. So you know it's a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive one way, and you know there's a better selection there, but even still, it's not the best. So between those two options and quite a bit from Amazon, I try to buy locally when I can, but you know, basically it really just isn't very easy to do. This particular method of making charcoal, it can be done much more simply than this. You can simply put your wood in a barrel, light the whole thing on fire, let it get a real good burn started, and then basically smother it out so that it's starved for oxygen, and you will produce charcoal. The big risk there is that if you don't get a good enough burn going, it burns out and it doesn't complete the job. If you get too good a burn going, it just burns up and turns into ash and you don't end up with anything. The other advantage of doing it this way, and you'll see how it works, is that it produces a very, very clean, fine charcoal because it burns so hot. What really happens here is that it's a kiln, basically. The smaller barrel, which is one of the, I think, 25-gallon grease barrels that you get from the automotive shops and so on, and that's what I pack the wood into. Now, any kind of wood will do. It doesn't have to be hardwood. Softwood is okay. It does have to be very dry. You can't put damp wood in there or punky wood or anything like that. It has to be decent quality wood. But the particular species of wood isn't really important. And you want to pack this little barrel as full as you can. Keep as little air out of it as possible. There's two reasons for that. First off, one of them is, you're going to turn it upside down, so you want the stuff packed in there pretty good so it doesn't fall out. And also, you don't want too much airspace in there, mostly because you want to get lots of charcoal, and secondly, you don't want a chance for it to get into combustion itself. So the barrel here is sitting up on a stump. Actually, it's sitting on a pot as well because my other stump disappeared. And I take my larger 45-gallon barrel and I set it right down over the top of this. The reason I have the little barrel sitting on the stump, it's sitting just slightly higher than the 45-gallon barrel is tall. So I can, as you can see, I can tip it over with the little barrel on the bottom of the larger barrel, and that way I don't spill out the material, the wood that I've just packed in there, assuming that I didn't get it in there quite tight enough. And even when you do, I mean, it's a heavy thing to lift, so it's not always the best way to do it. So once I've got the small barrel packed full and I've got it inverted into the larger barrel has some holes in the bottom of it, and I have it up on some blocked up just a little bit, and I start packing all around the outside edge of the small barrel. So in that space between the two different sizes of barrel, I pack that full of wood, and that's actually the part that burns, and that generates the heat. As you can see here, I let it get a real good head of steam, really get going, a good hot flame, and then once that's done and it's really burning, I have a chimney that I set on the top of it, and that creates even more of a draft, and it gets it even hotter. And periodically, of course, you have to lift the chimney off and pack a little bit more wood in. But it does a real fine job, and you get some really good quality charcoal. And there's a good reason for that. We'll go into that here shortly. So the burn is over. This is several hours. Actually, it's the next morning. We're taking the small barrel out now. All of the charcoal is obviously just falling out of it because it was still upside down. So now all of your product that you've made is in the bottom of that larger barrel. And nice to let it cool just a little bit, but the quality here, you're going to see this here in a moment, is very fine. When you buy charcoal from a store, it's usually very hard, but as you can see, this is just pure carbon. The beauty of that is that I also want to use it to make my water filter, and one of the big parts of a water filter for me will be activated charcoal. So this is the purest charcoal that I can get. It's much purer, yes, than what you'd get in the store if you just went and bought barbecue charcoal. We're not talking about briquettes here. That's a whole new ball game again. But even the regular charcoal just isn't made that hot. So now that I've got this super fine charcoal, I can grind that up into very fine particles, almost a powder, mix it with a little bit of lemon juice, create activated charcoal, and when that dries and it's ready to go, it makes an excellent filter in the water system that will actually take not only bacteria, but it can actually take out E. coli and a lot of other things. That's part of another video though, so we'll go on with this one for now. As it happens, having this heat source, since I'm working on it anyways, is a handy place to make my supper. So I've got a pot of beans going on here. That's pork in there. It was farm raised here locally. I butchered it myself, smoked it myself, and so now I've got myself a pot of beans cooking right beside me here while I work. It's kind of handy, and it sure has that smoke flavor. Even with the lid partly on, that smoke flavor is awesome. Another purpose that I use it for is my kiln. I'm kind of toying with the idea of also making a propane gas kiln or forge, I'm sorry. Just simply because it's much faster. You don't have to warm it up. It's just sort of instant on kind of thing. But I love the old school version of this. The kiln I made, it's just made out of a couple of brake drums off a Kenworth truck. The anvil is made out of a piece of railroad track, and it's upside down, and then I cut it to shape, and I welded on that piece of hardened steel that I'm actually got the piece on now, that lifted spot. And I drilled a hole through it and then filed it square to make a 1-inch square hardy hole. And that's my setup, and I'll tell you, it works really, really well. It actually gets hotter with this charcoal that I'm using than a gas kiln would. I can get this up to probably 2,000 degrees, and in reality, for the forging, the highest I ever really use is probably 1,500-1,600 degrees, maybe 1,700-1,800 possibly, but usually it doesn't need to go that high. Now that I've got this pounded into shape, I'm going to put it back in the forge with just a little bit of charcoal and let it very, very slowly cool down and just anneal overnight. And that takes the stress out of the metal after being twisted and pounded and makes for a stronger piece in the long run. Once it's cool, it will be reshaped the final bit with a file, and then it will go back into the forge for one more heating to get the temper set, and that'll be it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all on the next one. Have a great day.